talk about.
It's quite poor. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Ian and in this video I'm going to be covering all of the issues that I've had with the brand new Apple M1 Mac Mini running Big Sur. Now, the first thing to mention is that I've had quite a few issues. I've had the computer about, this is week 3, and straight out of the box there were issues. And the first issue really was that, and I knew that this would be a problem, is that I have a Zoom TAC 8.
When you're ready to get the most out of your equipment, step up to the Zoom TAC 8 Thunderbolt audio converter. The TAC 8 is designed to serve as a central hub in both professional and home environments. With its 8 analog and 10 digital inputs, and 20 analog and digital outputs, the TAC 8 allows you to do large multi-channel recording sessions with near zero latency.
And the first thing I did was I did a lot of research. I looked on Zoom's website and knew it wasn't going to work. And in fact, there doesn't seem to be many Zoom audio interfaces that will work with Big Sur and the M1 Mac. But I have other interfaces, so I thought I'd be able to get away with it, really. The word out there is that you will need a class-compliant USB connection, and Thunderbolt interfaces at the moment don't work. There is a hack out there that appeared on Reddit to try to get a Thunderbolt interface working, but you have to modify code, which I have to say I didn't really want to do. And if anyone out there has managed to get a Thunderbolt interface to work out of the box with an M1 Mac, let me know in the comments down below. So the other interfaces that I have is a Tascam Model 24, which has a built-in audio interface. And I also have a Behringer Euphoria UMC 1820, and one of those doesn't work. So let's talk about the Model 24 first. It's class compliant in the sense that you have to run a USB cable to it, and that does work. You have to download the driver from the website and it works fine with Big Sur and the Mac Mini. But I have to say, for me, it didn't feel like a particularly good way of working, really. It takes over 2 of the channels on the desk and it all felt a little bit clunky. So what I thought I would do is I tried the Behringer Euphoria UMC 1820, which I have to say I'm not a huge fan of, and I really only bought it to use with my laptop as an audio interface that I could carry around with me. It all plugged in fine. There was a little bit of information on Behringer's website saying that it would work fine, and for Mac you didn't need to download any drivers. Now, having said that, when I first tried it, I plugged in my Hydrasynth into it and it seemed to be working fine. But then when I came to record some vocals, there was a massive delay, and I spent a good amount of time trying to get this audio interface to work. In fact, I'll let you have a listen to the files that I created. So here is the Behringer with the Mac Mini M1 straight out of the box, and you'll see what I mean about the delays. Now, that first recording of the Hydrasynth, I hadn't realised that there was this massive delay, and I thought, oh, that's just quite a cool sound. It's only when I tried to do some vocal recording, and here's that recording.
This is a test recording on the Behringer audio interface to try and eradicate the 1, 2, 3, 4, eradicate the latency issues that we've been seeing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So, as you say, and so I thought this must be something to do with monitoring, and I couldn't come up with a solution. And I did try for probably a good couple of hours, trolled the internet, couldn't find anything that would help. And so in the end, what I did do is I plugged it back into my laptop, which is a 2015 laptop. Thing works perfect. So clearly there is an issue with this particular class compliant interface. So the thing to watch out for is when you try a class compliant audio interface in a Mac 1 Mini or the new Big Sur Mac 1 silicon chips, there can be a problem. So my solution to that was to buy a brand new interface. What I did is I bought a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. Now I did an unboxing video on this, but I have since used it quite a bit to do recording, and I have to say I think it's brilliant. Because I've got the Tascam, I don't really need to have more than 2 in and 2 out for most of the work that I do. So my opinion on that is it cost £130, paid full retail for it. It sounds fantastic. In fact, you know, obviously I can't compare them, but I think it does sound better than the Zoom TAC 8, if I'm honest. I quite like the way that you've got like this little identifier around the input control to tell you when it's too hot. So absolutely blown away with it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. The only thing I have noticed that if I leave my Mac Mini on for quite a long time, it obviously goes down into sort of powers down mode, and when it comes back up, the Focusrite isn't there, so I have to unplug it and plug it back in again. The M1 Mac Mini will allow dual monitoring, but it didn't quite work as I expected. Although my understanding is that the M1 MacBook Pros and the MacBook Air have bigger issues, but we'll come back to those. First of all, when you have a look at the M1 Mac Mini, we have one HDMI port and 2 Thunderbolt 4/USB-C ports, so it should be fairly easy. Now, the 2 monitors that I have are HP Elite Display E231s, which I bought a couple of years ago, so they're not that expensive and they won't support 4K, but that doesn't bother me. These monitors also don't have an HDMI input. The monitors support VGA analog, DVI digital and DisplayPort digital inputs. So, and if you don't know, so which is the best thing to use? So HDMI is always the first choice because it can transmit video and audio data. The next best choice after that is DisplayPort, which can handle 4K, but it only handles video and it doesn't handle any audio. After that, the choice would be DVI, which is capable of 144 Hz refresh rates. So it's a good choice if you have a 1080p 144 Hz monitor. This is especially good for gamers who have an FPS that is higher than 60. And then if all else fails, you can use a VGA. So my choice is to use the DisplayPort option, and on the first monitor I used the DisplayPort adapter to HDMI cable, which worked perfectly well. In fact, it's what I used on my old 2014 Mac Mini. The second monitor was a bit more of a challenge. I did quite a bit of research and there was quite a bit of conflicting information out there. It might be different for 4K monitors, but I'm running 1080p. But what worked for me was a USB-C to DisplayPort cable that I bought from Amazon for 12 quid. Came in this little box. And while I was at it, I bought a DisplayPort to HDMI cable, which is this one, thinking that this would replace the adapter that I had on monitor 1. Having said that, DisplayPort to HDMI just didn't work. So this thing is going back. Not sure if it's faulty or a quirk with the M1 Mac Mini and the monitors, but anyway, it just doesn't work. So not everything works as you always expect them to, really. It's also worth mentioning that if you have an M1 MacBook Pro or the M1 MacBook Air, that there isn't a second monitor option. And the only solution I've found is to use something called display link docking stations, which seem to be expensive. I've put a link down below to a video that I found that describes exactly what you need to do if that's what you've got. The two main digital workstations that I use are Reaper and Logic Pro X. Logic Pro X works fine, as does Reaper, and in fact I've just downloaded the Live 11 to try out, and that's working fine as well. The only other main issue I have had, and I've done a separate video on this, is I have a Nectar Panorama 1 MIDI controller for mixing. Now that works fine with Logic, but you have to put Logic in Rosetta 2 mode, and it doesn't work currently with Reaper. Now I haven't got an option to put Reaper into Rosetta mode. I have contacted Nectar, who have come back to me, and we're having a dialogue still, so they're trying to come up with a solution to that. What I did do with the Mac Mini was I wanted a clean install rather than porting from my old Mac. So it meant me reinstalling all of my plugins. So I have quite a lot of plugins from Isotope. All of those worked fine. I have some IK Multimedia plugins. I have Mondo Bass and Mondo Drums, and quite a few of their others. All of their plugins worked apart from Mondo Drums. Now I like Mondo Drums a lot, so currently that will not work with an M1 Mac. I have a suite of Waves plugins which were all the old 32-bit because I hadn't updated them. None of those will work, so I haven't updated them, and I'm not intending to, because I'd have to pay for the latest update with Waves, which to be fair, I don't want to do, and I've been using them less and less. Apart from that, everything else so far works great. I'm loving the speed of the Mac 1 Mini. It is so much faster, and editing video on it for stuff like this is super fast. I'm loving the Focusrite audio interface, and the work that I'm doing so far music wise is just great, really. It's not a choice that I would have made right now. If my old Mac Mini hadn't have died, I would have held off for a little bit longer, mainly to make sure that all of the software suppliers have updated all of their plugins and software and all that sort of stuff. So there are still some issues. It's going to take some time, really. One of the things that I have been told about, which I haven't really noticed, is I did watch a video and he said that the Bluetooth on the new M1 Mac Mini is an issue. Now the only Bluetooth thing that I have is a Magic Mouse, and I don't use that all the time. I only use that for music production, for zooming in and things like that. So far, no problems at all with that. And I have a Yamaha, which I use my phone to play music through. That uses Bluetooth, and I haven't noticed any problems with that either. So maybe Apple have already fixed this issue, but anyway, if you've got issues with Bluetooth, let me know in the comments down below. So the M1 Mac Mini gets a thumbs up from me once you can sort out some of the issues around it. So if you're going to go and buy it, there may, be prepared to have some issues, but otherwise it's an incredibly fast computer. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you in another video. So thanks very much. Cheers now. Bye bye.